So for those of you that I've not met, my name is Eric Harless. I'm the head backup nerd here at Enable. I've been with the organization a little bit over 7 years, working on Enable Backup under a different brand, a few different brands actually, but entirely Enable Backup for that duration. Most of that has been in product management, but my last year and a half has been as the this head nerd role. The goal there is to really be a partner customer advocate and help drive education, communication, community with our partners as it relates to the usage of the backup product. I still do interface directly with product management quite a bit. We bring those in to do roadmap sessions or usability sessions, those kind of things. If you want to reach out to me on social media, you want to drop me a quick email, follow me on LinkedIn, you can do that. My email address is on the screen in the lower right. It's eric.harless@enable.com. That's n-able.com. If you want to follow me on Twitter, it's at backup_nerd. We've got active forums out on Facebook and LinkedIn and Reddit as well, where you can interact with me in addition to the forums on our Success Center. Second part of the question, need to provide a lower RTO. What's the ideal way to achieve this? Okay, good question. Yeah, we'll definitely take some time on that one. Like I said, I've got a lighter crew today, so we can get into some of those more technical ones. So like I said, why office hours? It's about helping you achieve successful backups, increasing that likelihood of recovery. I can accept suggestions that might affect our roadmap. While I can't commit to our development of them, I can definitely get those over in front of product management. That's one methodology. There is a ideas forum available to you guys as well. The other thing here is about having that live Q&A where you can get your questions answered. If it's something we can't do in live session, I do have the ability to provide you a direct access for a one-on-one nerd call, and I will get a document up here, hopefully in just a couple moments, that has some links that I can share with you for access to, say, my Calendly scheduling app. That way you can see my schedule out about 6 weeks. I've got a quick poll here, and with some of the platform technical issues I was running into today, I don't have them preloaded or pre-polled in the system. So let me ask a couple quick questions here, and just give me a quick comment into the question section if you don't mind. I'm curious, what edition of Enable Backup do you guys use? Is it the RMM integrated version, what we call Managed Online Backup? Is it the Incentral integrated version where you see it as a iframe inside of Incentral, or do you use the standalone Enable Backup platform? If you use multiple, then yeah, let me know from a product perspective, and I'll try to tailor my use and my demonstration today based on where the audience is using. Okay. Standalone only backing up Microsoft 365. Okay, Rob, if you've got specific Office 365 questions today, feel free to drop those in. I don't normally get too deep into those unless we've got clients that have specific questions, unless there's been some additional work or development done on them, release notes, or I've done some new scripting or automation around it. So challenges you guys are running into. This is a great forum to voice those challenges you might be running into, the rough areas, the problem areas where you're spending too much time clicking to get to a particular detail, those kind of things, because I've got a lot of automation options available to help smooth out some of those. Okay, guys, I appreciate the feedback on that one. Thank you much. This second poll that I've got here is about just which RMM solution are you using. The reason I'm asking this question is I'm looking at building out some additional automation, and when I do that, the question is, do I build it first and foremost for the enabled products, RMM or Incentral, which would be an automation manager policy, or would it help to have these as common PowerShell scripts and automation that you could turn around and inject into your data or your AutoTask, ConnectWise, or Continuum, Kaseya, whatever it may be. So if you don't mind sharing, what RMM platform you're using in the question section, let me know that as well. If you don't want to share, by all means, that's perfectly fine. The last thing I think that I have poll-wise here is just a question of what's your proficiency level? You're a frequent user of Enable Backup. Maybe you're an occasional user, you've used it some time ago, you've heard of it, but you've not really used it, or you've heard very little of it. So this will also let me know whether I need to go into some of the basics or whether we can skip ahead to some of the more advanced components as I'm going through some of the various topics. I'm seeing some frequents. Frequents, yep, looking good. Okay, looks like we've got a fairly seasoned crew here. Um, Frequent, but only been using a few months. Thanks, Rob. Appreciate that. Frequent. Okay, good deal. Sounds like an advanced crew then, so I won't get into a lot of the basics. If something is too generic, just throw me a comment in there, and I can try to move on. I don't see anybody here that's saying that they are heard very little of it or not used it type of user. So appreciate that, guys. So I'm going to cover a couple quick recent updates that we've done. I did talk about these shortly post Empower, although we've not done a new major update release since then, and then the office hour crew does fluctuate quite a bit. So if you've heard this one already, I do apologize, but I just want to keep people abreast of what has updated in the product. As you know, the software does support auto updates, so your backup clients that you have deployed across your various end customer agents do automatically get updated with the latest, greatest versions. Typically, we're doing a monthly release, probably about 10 releases per year. There will be certain periods where we're not doing them around the holidays or unique events. As of now, we're in the switchover or cutover between SolarWinds MSP and Enable. So you'll notice that the current deployed backup manager client is 21.4. That is our April client release. I would expect here very shortly to see a new client version coming out. I'm not sure if it'll be the 21.6 or a 21.7 client, so we'll probably skip a couple version numbers there from a client perspective. But yeah, current shipping version is 21.4. There was an SP1 security update that was rolled out where we introduced some security enhancements around the backup APIs. And that was pushed out globally. So you would be running the latest and greatest security update to the April edition. Now, from a cloud service perspective, that one is a lot more friendly about client updates. We update the cloud service and everybody gets that when they log into backup.management, regardless of whether they've got newer or older clients deployed. So the current shipping version there is 21.6. We rolled out some enhancements for our Microsoft 365 offering. Exchange, OneDrive, and SharePoint retention is now synchronized. Previously, Exchange was a 7-year retention, and then OneDrive and SharePoint had a lower retention model, I think just a 1-year or a 2-year retention model. Those have all been globally updated now to share that same 7-year retention model. Nothing for you to do, nothing for you to change. That is a global setting. It's been applied against all of our Office 365, so offering retention parity now across all 3 platforms. The 21.4 update, most recent enhancement there from a cloud service perspective, we did roll out an update that branched the statistics around disaster recovery testing. So if you were using our software as a service offering to virtualize and boot your protected systems in the Enable cloud and then deliver a screenshot to you, we split out or forked those statistics so that now you see separate statistics for recovery testing performed via the recovery console on premise at your customer sites or in your colo compared to the testing done at an Enable hosted environment. So there were some API changes around that one also. I've already reached out and contacted the various other third-party vendors like LionGuard or oh heck, I'm drawing a blank on the other one that does third-party testing and reporting for backups. Backup Radar, there we go. So they're aware of the new API calls as well to get additional recovery statistics from recovery testing. That security update that I mentioned for 21.4, the weakness was identified in an API structure, and we identified that on June 7th, and we rolled out the update. It was auto updated on June 11th. So yeah, at this point now, you guys should all be running a 21.4, 21.161. That's the 160th day of the year that was rolled out. Okay. So Graham's got a question here. In the Exchange OneDrive SharePoint improvement, global, et cetera, 7 years. Yeah. So it's not a regional limitation. It's a global 7 years. So it's not tied to just a US rollout or Australia rollout. It's global. Good question there. This one you guys should have already seen. If you're not getting your notifications though, you may need to whitelist this address. You may need to open this up from a customer perspective if you've got customers that were receiving their daily email notifications around backup dashboards, backup statistics. So the previous backup daily dashboards and alerts, notifications, user additions, all of those things, if you're using our systems, would have been coming from an @SolarWinds address. It would have been backup @SolarWinds in a lot of cases. There may have been some that were coming from the backup.management domain, possibly as well. But you should see updates for those now coming from an enabled domain. If you're not seeing those, if you stopped receiving dashboards, notifications, updates, alerts, things of that nature, you may want to reach out to support. But before doing so, just verify that you aren't blocking or that emails from backup@enable.com are not being blocked. So let's get started into the open Q&A. I do have some projects that I've been working on that we can talk about as well, some scripting and automation if we don't have enough questions that come through. But there was an initial question here just about recovery testing and how to identify why you're getting a boot failure, things of that nature. So there's potentially lots of reasons that a system that you're recovering just is not bootable. It could be partially about the environment, the configuration, things of that nature. It could be drivers, although typically we're trying to do virtualization into a Hyper-V or a VMware environment, so the driver structure should be fine. It could be about inclusions or exclusions as well. So the data that is being recovered may not be the full system. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually bring up a remote desktop here into one of my hypervisor systems, and then we can kind of talk through some of this one. MS TSC. So I will keep the troubleshooting piece a little bit generic, but if you do want to reach out to me, we can schedule a one-on-one session to try to go through it in a little bit more detail and see if we can figure out an exact root cause. Okay. MSTSC, let me get that open one more time here. Okay, so you were saying that you're trying to test VDR of a server. It's restoring into Hyper-V. Missing the recovery console is saying it failed to boot. If this is the very first time you've added to the recovery console and enabled the boot offerings, then that's a little bit different troubleshooting methodology than if this was something where it had already been configured and then you just turned on the testing functionality a little bit later. My first thought would be is if you disable the recovery testing, does it show a successful restore, a successful Delta update, those kind of things. So, oops, I'm having trouble with my login here. Let me see if I can get this working first. So we'll take you through those settings here. Okay, there we go. So I'm going to go into my hypervisor environment. Here I'm running a 2012 R2, and I'm recovering machines that are 2012, 2016, and even some 2019 based systems. So typically I'm going to recommend you run the recovery console on the same OS version or same OS family as what you're recovering. That's when you're dealing with cases like, the hypervisor not understanding what a VHDX is versus a VHD. If you're using older legacy, 2008 R2 or 2008 hypervisors, but pretty much anything from a 2012 through a 2019, 2020 server environment is going to be able to virtualize those other operating systems just fine. So that should not be an issue for you. If you bring up the recovery console in here, what I would suggest is you come into your current configuration. I would go into virtual disaster recovery, or well, first off, I would ensure you don't have other data sources selected, and you're only doing the virtual disaster recovery. And then, of course, you've got the start virtual machine after restore here and take a screenshot. I would actually uncheck that and come back out of this configuration and do a force restore. As soon as it finishes initializing and applying those changes, configure that force restore. That would apply the most recent update again. And let's see if you get a successful restore operation. If that's successful, then troubleshooting the boot may be a little bit better, a little bit easier. The boot failure could be for several reasons. It could be that the system is very large or has a higher CPU or RAM requirement than what we've configured by default. So the virtual machine that we're restoring, when we create the virtual machine the very first time, we're going to assign it with 2 gigs of RAM and 2 virtual CPU cores. We can see up here on some of my standby machines that I'm doing with virtual disaster recovery. If we come in here and we go to settings, you'll want to come in here and adjust the RAM and the CPU up here to something a little bit more along the lines of what the system would require. At minimum, probably four virtual CPUs, 4 gigs of RAM. But if it is a fairly CPU or memory intensive server, you may want to bump it up to 50% or 60% at least of what the production physical machine was running at. And that's going to allow it to boot faster and take its screenshot. If it's applying updates, driver changes, things like that, then those could also cause it to take longer to boot. And then if after a certain period we fail to boot, we will just ignore or abort the attempt and log the restore as a failure. So first off, look to see if a standard restore works properly, then we'll troubleshoot the boot failure process. Bump the RAM up. Once you bump the RAM back up and you've got a normal successful restore, re-enable your virtual disaster recovery testing and see how that's going to work out for you. There is a way to expand the timeout. How long does it wait before it fails the boot test? And how long does it wait at a minimum before it will try to take a screenshot of the environment? So I'm going to show you 2 troubleshooting items here that we can do to identify that. If you go into File Explorer, on your hypervisor where you're running the recovery console, and we want to go into program files and into recovery console, you're going to find a config.ini file. And this config.ini file has some various settings that you can apply that would allow you to adjust the boot time. So I've got this commented out in my system right now. But you may want to take a screenshot of these and add these into your config.ini on your recovery console, and then schedule a reboot of that particular hypervisor, or at least fully stop all of the recovery console services and processes and restart them. But I would recommend a reboot after you add these. VDR VM boot delay in seconds. So I'm waiting 600 seconds before I can even look to check and see if there's a potential of a valid screenshot to capture. And then I wait, this VDR boot timeout in seconds is waiting 1200 seconds in my configuration here. And if I don't have a valid screenshot between 600 and 1200 seconds that it sees where it can snap, it's still working on unloading or updating hardware, getting ready or applying updates, those kind of things. Then after 1200 seconds, it will power off and blow away the snapshot that it created the checkpoint. And then that would show a failed boot scenario. So you may want to come in and increase the second value here from 1200 to something a little bit longer. You maybe give yourself 15, 20, 30, an hour even potentially if it's a rather robust system with a lot of changes and updates that you anticipate, and you don't have a lot of CPU and RAM to devote to it. But adjust those up. And this lower value, the 600 seconds I have here, this would be if you're getting a screenshot that's if it's capturing a screenshot on the loading screen. If it's capturing the screenshots a little bit too early, it needs to wait another 30 seconds, another minute, something like that before it is capturing the screenshot. You may want to bump this up to something a little bit longer. Start at 300, 500, 600 seconds, somewhere around there. And that will get you possibly closer to getting to that successful boot. Obviously, you can go with a really large, long time here to start. If you get a black screen only, it could mean that you've set settings that are waiting too long. Sometimes those boot screens will time out or go to black now in some of the newer OS versions. So if waiting too long, you could just get a black screen because it's been too long of a process. Okay. There is a documentation article about this, which gives you some of these details. I'll show you guys that here in a minute. Let me show you where the log files are for this. If you want to look at the actual log file to figure out what was going on and maybe if there was a result that was reported back. So if we come back into the File Explorer, we're going to go to C program files. I'm sorry, C program data. MXB, if you're using the standalone backup or the essential integrated version. You go to managed online backup if you're using the RMM version. And inside of here, we've got a backup manager directory, and we've got a set of logs directory, a logs directory folder. And you're gonna have a logs folder for each and every machine that you're recovering via the recovery console. So that would be a good place to look for machine-specific incidents or issues that may have occurred. All of these logs are debug logs. And then there is also a recovery console log here. So the recovery console log will show errors specific to the recovery console itself. So check the most recent recovery console log that's aligned with the restore session and see what you see inside of here, as well as what you're seeing inside of the individual backup FP instances. So if we come into here, we'll see, logging is continued from the previous day. We'll see here a connection attempt. It had a failed connection attempt, which shows up as a warning, trying to use, looks like the SOAP API. Now, not all the warnings are going to be things of concern. Some of the warnings are just informational, where it tries to check to see, is this an ESX environment? Is it a Hyper-V environment? Is the Hyper-V service running? Is it trying to do an Amazon or Azure type of connection? So that all the warnings are not necessarily critical. For instance, here we're trying to read system state warnings, so those are not really a concern. Errors are going to be prefaced in a bracket with an E. So if I come in here and just do a quick search for bracket E, we can see that there are no errors in this particular log. It's just potentially some warnings or debug or informational information. Okay, so hopefully that'll help you do a little bit of troubleshooting on it. Obviously, you can always open up a support ticket on it. They're going to ask you for those particular log files and maybe able to give you a response back as to what's going on there also. But I'd start with some of the items that I've pointed out. Now, as far as the documentation goes, documentation for recovery console, and I'm hoping this is interesting to the other users here too, if you try to troubleshoot. Let's go into my local backup.management console. You could also get these from success.enable.com and read through the documentation there, but we're going to go up in here with question mark for all manuals, and this will open up documentation in an iframe. There's a section here on recovery for virtual disaster recovery and recovery console. So we're going to come down here to continuous restore and advanced settings. And you can see here, we've got VADR, VM boot delays in seconds and timeout in seconds. So you can see the settings here that you would add into your particular log file, where the log file is, how to turn on debug logging if it's not already turned on, those kind of scenarios. In addition, the number of concurrent restores you can perform with your recovery console, how many system log items you're going to pump out from a restore perspective when recovering to Hyper-V, those kind of things. Okay. Let me see how we're doing here on questions. Please feel free to drop anything else you guys might have in here if you have them. So I know we had some Office 365 users. If there's anything specific you're looking for on the Office 365 front, please let me know. I do have some new scripts that I've been updating and working on recently that I can show you guys as well. I think that's in my planned agenda here. So the other question, the other part of the recovery side here is what's the ideal way? So second part is how to provide a lower recovery time objective. What's the ideal way to do that? So if you're using this recovery console here, it can be configured as to do continuous restores. Continuous restores are going to keep an offline virtual machine available, and I've got it running as frequently here as, this one is updated as of an hour ago, 2 hours ago, 7 hours, 4 days, 5 days. So really, recovery time objectives are going to be different based on different customers, and you're going to align the recovery time objective with the recovery point objective. So here, I've got a machine that I can boot, and I can boot this machine in typically 15 minutes or less from the time the customer calls me saying he's got a problem, a down system, a ransom, whatever it may be. I can boot up this virtual machine in my infrastructure or in the COLA or wherever this hypervisor happens to be running, possibly on premise, update DNS, and let the user connect to it. And that's going to be one of your shortest recovery time objectives because you've got a machine standing by there. And I've got various RPOs, recovery point objectives here. I've got potential for an hour of data loss, or 2, or 7, or 4 days, or 5 days. And it really is a question of what do you need for that particular customer? What can they afford? And then is the infrastructure set up to enable hourly backup or multiple times per day backups? Now, with any of these, I've got backups that are happening, more frequently than say 5 days ago. So what I can, at least I should on these particular devices, I'll double check the machine here in a second. It may actually be turned off, but what you can do is you can always come in here and right click on these systems and do a force restore. And the force restore will let you see what sessions are currently available. So yeah, it looks like this one I have just recently powered back on from a 13th perspective, and it started doing its own backups. But before that, the 8th was my most recent restore point. If the system had been ransomed and even the session from 5 days ago was infected, then I can come back here and grab a session from say the 7th and hit OK, and that's going to revert that particular standby virtual machine to the prior point in time. These are being updated continuously behind the scenes. However, this one here is unchecked. So an unchecked system is kind of on demand. So in the event that this machine needs to be updated or restored, I'd come in and just right click force restore, and it would take 4 days ago up to today or yesterday or whenever I choose. In those kind of scenarios, your recovery time objective is going to be a bit longer because it has to do a delta restore to get everything rolled forward. But you could have a machine that's staying a day or 3 or a week behind that's just relying on the cloud copy when you need it. It would require less bandwidth, but it's going to utilize storage still on this hypervisor because it has 99% or 98% of the data already sitting there. You could also have a device in here configured but never actually trigger the restore. So you can always see the sessions, and then in the event that they have a problem, you come in and right click on it and force a restore, and then it would build the VM on demand. But that's going to take you from a 15-minute or an hour type of SLA down to or up to a 4-hour, 12-hour, 24-hour SLA, depending on the kind of bandwidth and the available or the amount of selected data. Okay. So hopefully that's helpful for you guys. If it's not, please drop me some more questions in, and I will see if I can clarify. Can you please show that config? 1132. Yeah, let me open that config back up for you guys again. So yeah, here's my config.ini again, if you want to take a screenshot of it. Some of these additional settings down here, I have them all commented out right now. These are additional settings that I've been manipulating or working with. These settings right here, you can ignore the ones I currently have highlighted. They are not beneficial for you for a recovery console perspective. They do work in a bare metal recovery scenario, but I did disprove they are not viable in a recovery console setting. Let's see, what else do I have here? I've got running FP restore limits, running FP limit. That means I can run 10 concurrent or parallel restores. I've also adjusted this setting here, session restore attempts limit. This means that by default it's 1, and that means if a particular session fails to restore, it won't try that session again until a new session has been backed up. This means it can try it up to 3 times to restore it before that particular session is ignored for future restores and waits for a new backup to happen. Um, Restore download thread counts. By default, we're using 10 threads. That's going to be 10 per individual restore session. If you've got gigabit fiber though, or high-speed connections, you could bump the thread count up here. I'm using 50 now per restore thread, and that lets me better utilize my gigabit fiber for those 10 parallel restores. Okay. So the question is running, does the local restore work from the local speed vault? It can, definitely, although the local restore is only going to trigger in continuous restore mode once the cloud has been synchronized. If the speed vault has access to a local, if the recovery console has access to a local speed vault, it can definitely use it. But the recovery console might also work if you're using it in a offsite location, and then it would pull all the data from the cloud. What you're going to do on a per device basis when you configure these is you're going to come in here and configure the local speed vault down here if it's on the same LAN. If your speed vault was a USB drive, but now you want to connect to it with a recovery console, just mount or map that USB drive as a network share, and then you could connect the speed vault via the network share. So Rob's got a question on the SharePoint side. Any idea when a SharePoint list will be included in backup? Rob, I have no idea on that one. I do apologize. I know they're working on expanding the SharePoint functionality, and they continue to work on Teams functionality as well. If you want to drop me a quick email on that one, I can add you into a conversation with Andrei Radushkin, who is the senior product manager that owns the cloud to cloud and the continuity projects. So I can get you in a conversation with him directly and everything. So doesn't restore work from, okay, yep. Can't please, okay, yeah, that's good. Sorry, I'm just making sure that I'm not answering the same question multiple times. Okay, let's see. Graham was asking, I'd also be interested in a conversation around Teams backup. It's something our customers are asking about. Okay. Yeah, Graham, I know I've got your email address here, but do me a favor, just because I've switched over to the Enable mail server now from the SolarWinds side. Drop me a quick note, and I'll just do a reply back and bring Andre into it, and he can get you updated on that one. In addition, if you're interested in like seeing beta or early adopter access or participating in user groups and things like that, you know, he'll be interested in talking to you regardless of that. But if you are interested, he'd be interested in capturing information to add you into those type of things in the future. Okay, let me see where we are with my next question. If I've missed anybody's questions here, please just drop another one in really quick to kind of bump it to the top. But I think I've gotten most of the ones now. So I've got a couple other topics that I want to cover. We got about 15 minutes or so left before we need to wrap. These are some projects that I'm actively working on, and I'm curious if you guys would be interested in these. Just a comment in the comment into the question section would be great. So obviously there's the competitive side of things, and there's competitive both from a standpoint of you know, how do I build products that allow you to standardize your backups and not have to use multiple solutions. There's the competitive rip and replace when you're replacing a backup product that's on premise at a customer's location already, or you're taking over from another MSP, or you're actively fighting in the market against vendors. You know, I'm curious, would it be beneficial to you to have ammunition to compete against something like an appliance-based backup like a Datto, or a virtualization, a host-based backup like a Veeam solution, an image-based backup solution? You know, I'm trying to build scripts and automation right now that allow the migration or the conversion, or you know, how to you know, clearly visualize the deltas and the differences between those kind of environments, to show our strengths and point out the advantages of the product. Is that something you guys would be interested in? Maybe it's a boot camp, maybe it's a set of scripts and automation, or a combination of the two. Additionally, I'm thinking about co-opetition here when it comes to things like Autotask or ConnectWise, because there is a certain value for integration needs. When you're utilizing our backup, you might be utilizing those tools for billing and PSA work on the back end, or maybe you're using their full-blown RMM solution. I know some of you folks answered what RMMs you're using, so I appreciate that. Would additional integration be beneficial through the backup.management infrastructure? I've been working on some scripts and some alerting and things of that nature, which I could obviously push out into our own PSA and ticketing system. But if you're using a third-party RMM or a third-party PSA / ticketing system, would it be beneficial to get such as error messages and alerts, more detailed information pushed into those platforms, maybe billing usage, those kind of things. And I'm looking for partners that would like to maybe work with me or see some of my early prototype scripts as I'm building them out. Recovery console. The recovery console, this is something to point out, and this could also align with the troubleshooting you were trying to do there on the failed to boot. Recovery console does run as a user mode application. It does require you to have a user logged in on the system while you're doing your continuous restores or your on-demand restores. If you log out or reboot the machine, then it's not going to automatically log a user in, and those restores aren't going to continue. If you just log out, it's going to abort those in-process restores, and that could look like a false positive when it comes to a failure perspective. So I have been experimenting with a couple third-party applications as well as PowerShell and task manager-based automation to allow the recovery console to run behind the scenes, either auto starting on a user login or system reboot, and additional reporting and notification. So if anybody would be interested in that one, yeah, just a quick note in the chat session, and I'd be happy to reach out to you with some of that information. Or if you guys want to see it, if we have time here, I can actually show a little bit of this off, some of the things I've been working on. Bare metal recovery, PowerShell inclusion, that's something else that I'm looking at. Injecting the PowerShell functions into our WinPE environment. That would allow me to do some things like automate some of the partition management, be able to allow undeletable partition as part of bare metal recovery, additional configurations, maybe to launch into bare metal recovery, but to perform just a system state restore or granular, possibly, system state component restore, things of that nature. So just looking to expand what I can offer from our native tool set today through scripting, APIs, and automation, and maybe beat dev to the punch a little bit, because I know that some of the items they're working on right now don't necessarily align with some of these priorities. Okay. So there are some new scripts that I've updated. There's a list of other prior scripts I've created. These are all available on my GitHub page, these and more. So if you capture that link that you see on the screen here, and I apologize, I normally have a handout where you can just download all the links. I did not manage to get it onto my new system yet to upload into the webinar, so I've got to restore that from my backup. The GitHub page, though, is where I put most of the prototypes or version updates to the scripts that I've worked on, and then I do transition those over to the the success.enable.com site, and add those into the automation cookbook as well. So most recent and latest available on GitHub, established, trued, tested, a lot of customer interaction and usage would also exist on the GitHub on the Enable cookbook page. The script that I've been working on recently was updates to our Office 365 API calls and providing additional statistics and user information from a reporting perspective. So I will definitely take time and show you guys that one before we wrap up here today, because we've got some Office 365 users or some potential users who you had told me on the session today. Let's see if any other questions have come up before I move in. Okay, so mostly just acknowledgements or requests. So cool, let me drop into my scripting environment here, and we're gonna look at that Microsoft 365 report. So I'm calling this script get M365 device statistics. I think version 19 is my current script. Version 617 was the last major edits that I've done to the particular script, and I've been showing it out to partners now, and getting feedback. Some minor little edits here or there, but this is going to be roughly the same versions available on the GitHub page. Any minor updates would get a publish or update. So when I run this guy, it's going to utilize credentials for your backup.management console to pull details. If you are a Essential integrated user and you're using Office 365 inside of there, I could provide you with a read-only access credentials that would allow you to do API calls against your Essential backup infrastructure. You just want to reach out to me so that I can provision those for you. So as with most of my scripts, it used a set of stored or cached credentials that I have secured locally on the machine. Those are tied to the user profile and the current logged in user, so they are not transportable. You can't move them to another system. Another user logged in on this machine would not have rights to use those stored credentials, but that makes my demos and my environment a lot easier. It also makes for scripting and automation when you're going to run this from a task scheduler a bit easier. I obviously don't want to pass credentials to anything in clear text, and I don't want to pass credentials as part of a command line. If I can help it, which is why we would also utilize things like Automation Manager to store secure credentials and pass them to scripts if we were going to run this instead of PowerShell using Automation Manager. So I'm going to run this. There are other switches you can run when I run the script as well, such as the all partner switch or all devices. I could specify the number of devices I'm going to report back on. In this case, I'm saying, give me a maximum of 5,000 devices. Can I pump this out on my screen in grid view? Do I export it as a combined report or as individual reports? Do I launch the reports when they are generated? And then where am I going to save the Excel files and CSV files I create with a comma delimited format? Okay. So in this case, I'm going to run this with just my SE demo partner. And I'm specifying a partner here because I've logged in as kind of a global admin type of role here, where I've got a lot of additional visibility. I can pull up multiple accounts or look at the multi-tenant infrastructure. So technically I could pull for you, if you guys asked me to, on a private call, I could pull your own statistics for you and let you see them as we went through and troubleshot them. But in this scenario, since it is, I'm a root partner, I can't run a global statistic. I'm going to need to run it for a particular end customer or reseller level customer. I'm going to run it for SE demo. Now, SE demo is ran out of the Netherlands office, and it's going to show a bunch of end customers. So these are the end customer names here. You can see they're all end customers. When they were created, they're all in production. Here's the partner UID. If you're doing auto deployment, you need the installation string, those kind of things. So we can select one or more of the one of these partners and pull their statistics for their devices, or we can pull the parent partner and get all of the statistics for all of the devices. So we're going to do at the top level. And for those of you that aren't familiar with PowerShell, this out grid view is a common component of PowerShell. It lets you get a graphical manipulation. So it means you can come in here and select multiple entities just with a shift or control, and then run reports for just those selections. Okay. So we're going to choose just these two, and I'll tell it okay. And that's grabbed device statistics now for those Office 365 domains. You can see I've got my color bars on the screen here as pluses and minuses. I've got the name, I've got the sizes, I've got the named users that are tied to each of those individual accounts, and those are dropped out into my console. So you could use those obviously in PowerShell to dump them to your PSA, to put them in your billing system, to do pretty much anything you want to, just with a little extra scripting. But not everybody is script savvy, so I do generate CSV and Excel files here. These are set up to auto run, so they're opening up on my other window here. So I'll pull these through so you can see them. So here are my device statistics, just for the individual devices or the domains under each of these end customers. My color bar for the last 28 days. Number of errors, billable mailboxes, number of mailboxes, how many of them are shared, number of OneDrives, SharePoint users, and SharePoint sites, where it's being stored, the account tokens, So a lot of good information from a Microsoft perspective, even custom columns. If you have custom columns enabled in the console, you could have freeform entry columns here, which populates billing information or reference accounts or a ConnectWise tie-in if you needed it, what have you. So there's that. As you drill into each one of these individual ones, I have here now a report of, what is this one called? This one called user summary. This is a summary of billable users as of right now, what's being pulled out of the console, what's currently configured. Granted, it could change, 10 times a day as an administrator is adding and removing and changing mailbox licenses and things around. But we can determine, is it a shared mailbox? Is mail selected for backup? Is OneDrive selected for backup? Is SharePoint selected for backup? And then what is the Microsoft user ID tied to that? So if you see two users with the same name, but they have different UIDs, well, that means you've probably got one as a deleted user that's still floating around, and you've re-added the user with a new GUID, a new UID, okay? And that can help you troubleshoot your billing questions. Now, this is just a summary, though, of billable users. It doesn't show anything about non-billable users. That's my next export, which is showing me all of the users that are identified by Microsoft 365 for that particular site. And this is grouping them together into a single report. So you can see this is for one domain, and this is for another down here. But here's a new user that was added, and they're currently unlicensed, so they're not being backed up. They're excluded from mailbox selection. They're not part of OneDrive selection. It's unlicensed and excluded. It's not part of SharePoint. It's excluded. So clearly, there's not enough licenses for me to back this guy up. I would need to either add more licenses in order to be able to select it for backup, or to convert one of these other licensed environments here to shared, possibly to free up a license if it was a administrative account or something that wasn't actually used anymore, move things around a little bit. But in addition, you can see the last time it was backed up and the current selected size and do I show selected size? Let me think about that one. OneDrive selected size. If you have OneDrive turned on, you can see how much data is in the OneDrive environment. When the last backup was and when was it successful, so on and so on and so forth. So lots of really, really good information there to troubleshoot your usage, your billing, if something spiked, what have you. Now, while we're talking about Office 365, let me recommend two more things here. Leverage the undelete capabilities inside of Office 365. That is your first and foremost, your best friend to pull data back. It allows for a certain amount of restore capabilities at the end user level to undelete something that they restored, or I'm sorry, to restore something they've undeleted without having to go to your backup. Use the Active Directory recycle bin on your servers, your domain controllers, so that you've got some other rollback components there as well. That's going to give you a lot of additional flexibility without having to go to the backup to pull data. I think we're wrapping up really, really good. So I think it's all I have today, guys. We do have more office hours sessions configured for the upcoming months. You don't have to wait and register each month. You can register for multiple monthly sessions up front. If you visit success.enable.com, there is a dedicated page there for events. You'll be able to see all of the upcoming boot camps and office hour sessions for all of the available nerds. So I would encourage you to take a look at that. Really do appreciate that. I've got about 5 minutes left for the session today. I don't see any additional questions here, so I will point out just a couple more links since I don't have a handouts document in the session today. If you link to enable.com/blog, there is a filter where you can filter on just blog articles by the nerds, and then you can sub-filter that one based on product or topic even, so you can get just sales and marketing or security related stuff. You can subscribe to those. So I've got several blogs that are out there already that you can read. They're going to take you through kind of a day in the life to how do you use the console to manage by exception and define success, or triage devices that have problems. Which ones should you be attacking first? When you've got a list of more than one screen of failures, where do you start? The part 4 and 5 are about tracking and controlling your usage, either through tuning your backup selections or identifying where you've got spikes. I've got a couple other series that I've started around backup automation for deploying your devices. Now I have some Mac and Linux deployment and some specific automation scripts I'm going to be working on here really soon, trying to roll out to you guys. I've been a little bit delayed with our migration. And then I have done a disaster recovery series already on Are You Disaster Ready, which talks about our recovery testing that's hosted and options for you with the recovery console. And then the last two, part 2 and 3 around there here are doing recovery and targeting EC2 or Azure for your recovery. And then you could use those principles to pick just about any other cloud platform, and it would show you how to kind of get the data into there. Now, it's not a rapid RTO type of recovery. It is more about a final data migration or a data landing structure, because for the most part, you're going to be building VHDs or VMDKs and then injecting those into these infrastructures. I don't have a direct native restore back into it. So you've got to utilize some of their tools to finally load the data back in. So it's more about getting back to your final resting place versus a very short RTO discussion. The last one there, specific scripts. I'm thinking about doing individual blog articles on specific scripts, like the Office 365 one I showed you, or security scripts to add GUI password support, things of those nature. Although it's kind of a toss-up. Do I do a blog? Do I do a video? Do I do a combination of the two? Do I just cover them in office hours? Still trying to figure that one out exactly. It'll probably be a mixture of all three to see what resonates, where I get the most hits and everything on the various topics. So guys, thank you very, very much. I appreciate it. I will see you next month for office hours. But in the meantime, if you do have questions, comments, or things of that nature, feel free to reach out to me directly on social media or via email, and we can schedule a one-on-one session. Talk to you guys later. Bye.